Okay, in this video I'm gonna go how to build this werewolf character. So the main clearing abilities for this build are Lunar Sword, Lunar Blessing, and Herald of Ice. Get a lot of AoE on the Herald of Ice, so I have 3.3 meters on the second weapon set. I also have Lunar Sword is for clear, and Lunar Sword has the Ancestral Call. Ancestral Call gives you 2 additional strikes, which is the reason why I can have so much coverage with this build. And Lunar Blessing is pretty good. It will, any immediate attacks will trigger moonbeams. I have a very high target search radius because of my AoE scaling, and they recently buffed Lunar Blessing, and you have now 1 additional moonbeam target. Instead of 5, we have 6 now. Just gonna go over what gems I'm using. So for single target damage, you use Shred. Use Shred on frozen enemies to trigger ice fragments. And I have rapid attacks, crescendo, elemental armament, close combat, and long fuse. Long fuse last, because this will only scale the damage of the ice fragments. And for your Lunar Assault, I recommend getting the deep freeze, so that the enemy is frozen for longer duration, which means you can get out more ice fragments with your Shred. And then you can get the Bater's Vengeance, or if you can't buy this one, I would get Ice Bite instead. They have the same category, so you cannot use them on the same ability, but you can have Ice Bite on a different ability, for example Arctic Howl, which can freeze enemies as well, the enemies that are primed for freeze. So you can have both Ice Bite and this gem, the buff of this gem up. So I have close combat, very important, Ancestral Call to improve your clear. Every 3 seconds you get one attack with 2 additional strikes. And then I also use efficiency, because otherwise my mana cost is very, very high. So Lunar Blessing, we don't need second wind anymore, because I have, with my rage and some skill effect duration on the tree, I have a long enough duration that I can always maintain this buff. So you get cooldown recovery. Cooldown recovery will, of course, reduce the cooldown time, as well as the cooldown time of the moonbeam. So here we have 0.7 seconds. I also get the interlude buff, Alliance Pillar, with increased cooldown recovery rate for the Lunar Blessing. And then you can get damage, 4 gems, elemental armament. I have Execute and Long Shot. So my moonbeam has a target search radius of 8.5 meters. Chances are that all the melee units that I fight are killed, so usually moonbeam will target monsters that are outside of melee range. And for Herald Ice, the standard, I have Magnified Area to increase my radius. Execute Deadly Herald. Deadly Herald will cost 20 spirits. If you don't want to use Deadly Herald, you can also use, because you don't have, for example, the spirit, whatever, you can also use Cold Attunement, or worst case scenario, you can go for Old Mastery. Then you can get Elemental Focus and Elemental Armament. Then you have Pounce. Pounce is used as a movement skill, but also to apply the Freezing Mark. So you can socket another mark, Freezing Mark, into Pounce, and that will override the default mark on Pounce. So Freezing Mark is pretty important. You get more freeze build-up, and you also get a buff. And then you get the Mark for Death, because our Shred does have quite a bit of physical damage. So you want to have some armor break, and one very easy way to get armor break on single target damage on single target is the Mark for Death support gem. And then you can get, for mana sustain and life sustain, you can get Mark of Siphoning. And I have cooldown recovery rate, so I can leap around more often. Cross Slash, Cold Attunement, Element Armament, Close Combat, and Magnified Area. Savage Fury, very good single target damage buff. I have Prolonged Duration, and you can either use Clarity. I have a little bit of extra spirit, so I use Clarity, or you can use Precision. And then Internal Rage, to have Rage Regen, so I don't need Rage on hit on any of my abilities or on the tree. And then you can have Elemental Conflux. I have some extra Spirit to spare, and this is what I pick. You can also, instead of this, you can go for the Overwhelming Presence, so it is easier to freeze enemies. It's Cold Mastery, Prolonged Duration, and then you can also use Arctic Howl. I very rarely use it because I have enough damage at this point, but Arctic Howl, you get the Ice Bite and you can empower your attacks. So you have Deep Freeze, Cold Mastery, and Tireless. Then for the gear, so I have a Jade Talisman. I think I would recommend this. It's a very slow base, but it's one of the, has the highest base physical damage, which is pretty important for Herald of Ice, because Herald of Ice doesn't scale off attack speed, and Moonbeam doesn't scale off attack speed, so having a slow weapon is not that big of a deal. What I recommend for your talisman is increased physical damage, add cold damage, and also get add lightning damage, and very important is also plus level of all attack skills, because this will scale the Herald of Ice. The Herald of Ice doesn't have a melee tag, so any melee plus melee skills on your gloves and amulets will help your single target damage, but it won't help your clear on your Herald of Ice. But this one has the attack skill tag, so this will scale Herald of Ice. Very nice. So the helmet I generally go armor, except for my boots, because for my boots I have this node clicked, 3+3 to armor per 1 item energy shield on equipped boots. So my boots will give me quite a bit of armor if I use an energy shield base. And for helmets, I recommend getting a socket with maximum rage, the Soul Core of Ferocity, and you can have maximum life, very high increased armor, and armor also applies to elemental damage to improve your survivability. Chest, I have spirits, so I can run Elemental Conflux. You don't need to have Spirit. I would recommend getting increased maximum life with armor. And again, the armor also applies to elemental damage. Suffix is very good for this build. And on your amulet, you can get maximum life. And you can also, if you're interested in increasing your single target DPS, and I guess also the DPS of your Lunar Salt, and any other gem that has the melee tag, you can get +3 to melee skills, but these amulets are very expensive. And on the amulet, I have the Anointed Doomsayer for for increased area effect on the Herald. You can also get something like increased area effect for attacks, just attack area damage, devastation, and if you want more cooldown recovery with skill effect duration, multitasking is very good. If you just want more pure damage, you can get Battle Trance for maximum rage. The amulet, I have resistances, maximum life. You can get melee skills. On your rings, you want added physical damage and added cold damage. I have 2 on this ring, and then having maximum life, attributes, and resistances are pretty good. So on your gloves, a lot of damage is increased attack speed and plus melee skills. But again, plus melee skills is pretty expensive usually. So other than that, you can add physical damage again, add cold damage. I've added lightning damage because this was, I think I found this, but a glove like this wouldn't be too expensive. And belt, pretty straightforward. You can fill your attribute requirements, get resistances and maximum life. Important is that you have at least 2 charm slots, so you can take advantage. So you have in total 3 empty charm slots, and you can take advantage of this Sacred Flow Essency notable, plus 40 spirit for each of your empty charm slots. And on my boots, I have an energy shield base, movement speed, high energy shield, and suffixes. You can just fulfill your attribute requirements and your resistances. So the passage tree is gonna go over the most important nodes. Having armor applies to elemental damage is pretty good. I have 16.5k against elemental damage, and it really helps a lot while mapping. So immobilization buildup is also freeze buildup. This node, again, because of the energy shield base, these nodes are pretty straightforward. We don't use elemental weakness. We do have exposure, but we don't use elemental weakness. Elemental weakness would require a lot of intelligence. So I use Elemental Pen or Shapeshifted. Then you can get these nodes. I have this on the second weapon set, I believe. And I also have Cold Pen on my jewel. These nodes are very good. Each rage stack gives us 1% more damage. So these are high value nodes. Here you can get increased armor. I would get them rather late. You can get these for increased area effect scaling. Then on the second weapon set you get more increased area effect. So I have my AoE set up on my first weapon set. Single target damage. All these nodes on the second one. And then you can get these nodes. All these top nodes are pretty good. Ancient Aegis, very high value, a lot of armor. You get these nodes. The Lunar Blessing is on my first weapon set. Only set to my first weapon set, so I can take advantage of these nodes. These increased skill effect duration. Otherwise, pretty straightforward tree. I have these nodes here because I do have a little bit of lightning damage. And this is usually enough to shock your enemy. And I also have a little bit of fire damage. And this is also enough quite often to ignite your enemy. This I only need for my single target damage. Other than that, the tree is pretty straightforward. For the Ascendancy, I would start with Turning of the Seasons when you level. Then you can get Reactive Growth. And then I would get Sacred Flow. And when you have Sacred Flow, you can add Eternal Rage. So the first Spirit Gem you would usually get is Savage Fury. Then you can get Herald of Ice for clear if you have enough Dexterity. So getting enough attributes is kind of a problem on this build. This is rather a hybrid strength int build. So you will need a bit of attributes on your gear to fulfill the attribute requirements. I'm over capped, so I have a little bit of extra which I spend into strength to get more maximum life. So Savage Fury first. If you don't have enough dex, you just don't get Herald of Ice. And then you can get, when you have your third Ascendancy notable, Sacred Flow, you can get Eternal Rage. And later on you can get Elemental Conflux, but it's optional. It's not very good for clear, because it alternates between elements, but for single target damage, you can reset the element that is chosen, which I did in the Sashed clip. And in my case, I have a 22-second buff on the Conflux. If you don't want to do this, you can just use a Overwhelming Presence. So it's easier to freeze enemies. And then you also don't need a Spirit Chest. And then I would get Arbiter of Evolution last. Physical damage taken as very good physical mitigation, double adaptation effect for your elemental mitigation. Yeah, other than that, I have a lot of AoE nodes clicked to scale the AoE of Herald of Ice to improve my clear. Otherwise, the clear of the Frost Wolf or Ice Wolf is not that great. But I'm also gonna go over the skill rotation. So for single target damage, first skill you're gonna use Pounce, apply your Freezing Mark. Freezing Mark will enable you to have more freeze buildup against your opponents, and when you trigger the mark, you will gain a buff. So you trigger the mark by using Lunar Assault, because Lunar Assault has so much freeze buildup. And when the enemy is frozen, you can apply another mark. Then you start using Shred. You apply another mark because of the Mark for Death, so you can get Armor Break, because Armor Break we'll need for the physical damage part of our Shred, which we have quite a bit actually. And this also gives us attack and mana leech, this freezing mark because of our mark of siphoning. You start using Shred, and a lot of the ice fragments will fall behind the target. So what you do is, when he unfreezes, you do the cross slash, or when the ice fragments are about to detonate, you do the cross slash to pull them onto the enemy. And when he unfreezes, freeze buildup is pretty difficult to get. So you initially use Shred still for a while until freeze build up is easier. Then you start using Lunar Sword again. Of course, before you fight the enemy, before the fight starts, you use your Lunar Blessing and you use your Savage Fury. You'll need Fury, and that is basically your single target rotation. And for clear, so important to know is every 3 seconds, your Lunar Sword is gonna be empowered with your Ancestral Call, and then you hit 2 additional targets. This will make for these like almost screen-wide shatters. So you can kind of play around your Ancestral Call if you want, or you can just attack very quickly. It's up to you. And pounds you use to leap around if you want.